The pieces have changed. Does that mean the rotation has? Camille and I have some thoughts on just how deep the Bucks will go this upcoming season. Coming up next on Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. My name is Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis. You can hear me on the Bucks Radio Network throughout the course of the season, beginning in less than 2 weeks already as the season is fastly approaching. You can find Camille as an analyst in our Locked On NBA show on the Technical Foul podcast as well. Today's episode of Locked On Bucks is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. So, Camille, something that's come up quite a bit from our everydayers has been this rotation. And we have done countless shows already this summer on who's going to start and what's the starting rotation going to look like. I even heard it debated by Zach Lowe, which did you listen? Did you hear that segment?
I heard Kyle Kuzma has to be a starter, and I was like,
I was going to say, I don't know if he is uninformed here, and Rob Mahoney too, who might be our knight in shining armor on the ringer. But I don't know if it was just being ill-informed or, oh boy, but the consensus was Kyle Kuzma starting, and they seem to put a lot of importance on Taurean Prince as well, and Amir Coffey, who may not even make the roster, but we digress here. One of the things we haven't really dug into is what the rotation itself is going to look like and how those minutes are going to be dispersed. So I guess let's start here. Last we spoke, we were aligned. The starting five we think is going to be what everybody hopes it is, correct? With the three guards essentially, and then Giannis and Myles Turner.
Yeah, with Kevin Porter Jr., Gary Trent Jr., AJ Green, Giannis, and Myles Turner. I think that's the preferred five, at least for me, and I know a lot of other people. After seeing how that playoff run went last year and the end of the last year's regular season, and with Horace comments as well about the sample sizes, about why they wanted to try to bring this group together, I would be surprised if that's not the five.
That is the biggest thing for me, is the Horst comments on sample size. Like, I mean, you can make a case that it's more of like he was speaking to guidance of how they needed to build the roster, perhaps, but I think it's also, it's very easy to use as like, see, I tried to tell you, like, we believe in the sample size, even though it's not the largest. We believe in the data that we saw there, so this is what we're going to lean into. So rotation then, and how you disperse the minutes. It's not just Doc Rivers, to be clear, but most coaches are not going to go all that deep, even in the regular season. If we are led to believe that the Bucks have a full 15-man roster of guys that, not in the past, when we think about other names like the back of the roster and how they filled it out, where you kind of knew like, well, this is basically insurance. I mean, you could point to at least one of those names, depending on what happens with the shakeout of the roster. But like, there's a different back of the roster as well. So there is going to be 2 to 3 odd men out here. And the caveat, we don't know who the 15 on the roster are going to be yet. I think we have our thoughts, but let's just start there. Who are the guys that you would look at and say, if I am to assume in the regular season they're going to play 10 to 11 guys, we'll say, and be generous, and then there's a couple that are matchup based perhaps, and there's just you're the 14th and 15th men. How does the back of the roster look? And I suppose let's start with this. Who are the 15 guys?
Yeah.
So the 4 guys that are vying for 2 spots, basically, I think you would look at it. So who are you selecting? And then how do you shake out the rest of the rotation?
Yeah, I think that the 2 guys that are the odd men out end up being Andre Jackson Jr. and Amir Coffey after the guaranteed signing of Thanasis for the 1-year deal, which put the Bucks at 15 guaranteed contracts for the season. So to me, it just feels like now Coffee is going to be one of those guys who's out where initially I was like, oh, well, maybe he's going to be the one to kind of press for Andre Jackson Jr. spot. But now with the Nassas getting that 15th spot guaranteed, it seems as if it'd be Ajax and Coffee that are the odd men out, which when you think about it is kind of interesting given one of the things that we've been pointing to throughout the season or the summer so far of an area to keep an eye on is just the wing size. So the fact that it could be two guys who kind of give you some size at the wing, albeit we know that Amir Coffee doesn't have the wingspan or like a lockdown defender chops or anything like that. Meanwhile, Ajax on ball, really, really good. Still some work to do in some other areas, but it feels like those two are going to be the two guys out. So I think let's pause and let me see. Do you think those are going to be the two guys who are out on the roster, or do you think with Coffee coming in, there's going to be some kind of way, and maybe it's a Tyler Smith or someone else we see as an odd man out?
I was really hoping to take guidance from leadership and just avoid answering the question altogether. I don't. I think I've kind of waffled on this, and I've probably said as much on recent shows leading up to this. There was a time when I and you and I talked about this in one of the shows, questioned, well, we do have to take a step back and take in everything with the Amir Coffee signing, the fact that it dragged this long into the summer, that there was no other suitors, that he couldn't get a guaranteed deal. Like, is that the tell for us that it's, hey, he might be on the way out and we're just doing him a solid and seeing if he can catch on here? I have shifted to think of, I frame it as this. Let's say something happens, and I hate even naming names and putting things in the universe. So something happens where you need one of those guys at the back of the rotation to play. You and I have heard that, granted, I wouldn't anticipate to hear we are really bummed with what we're seeing, but on the heels of Summer League, they've been very pleased with what they've seen in individual workouts and scrimmages and other drills with Tyler Smith, who has been in Milwaukee for quite some time now. The Bucks are liking what they're seeing. Take that with a grain of salt. I still don't see them giving up on Tyler Smith after 1 year.
Same.
And I guess it comes down to this for me. If I'm posed with, we need someone to play on the wing right now. Something happened. We need to find minutes for someone. Who do you trust more to give you impactful minutes, or at least not screw up and be an NBA player for you in a pinch, if it's short-term or long-term, between Amir Coffee and Chris Livingston?
Ooh. See, that's tough because Chris Livingston doesn't have the track record where you can point to it and be like, well, we know that you can be an NBA role player. Meanwhile, Coffee has the track record where you can point to it and be like, we have a baseline of what we can expect. And the ceiling isn't super high with Coffee, so you kind of know what you're going to get, which could sound like an insult, but it's really not. It's very comforting to know exactly what you can expect for certain players at certain times. But again, Livingston has the young upside of like, what else can he become? And Summer League this past year showed a little bit more to his game of, okay, the decision making is quicker. He doesn't hesitate from shooting those threes. The Bucks have tried playing him at multiple positions, from small forward to power forward to center at various times, and he doesn't have the track record yet to be like, I trust to put you in the game. But I'm more interested to see what he might be able to do long term than Coffee because of the age there. But the answer for me right now would have to be Coffee. I don't feel great about that for the reasons I mentioned. But if you're talking about trust in this particular moment, I think it has to be Amir Coffee, although I think Chris Livingston has a lot of intrigue going into this season.
Yeah, I mean, I hate talking about, especially as somebody paid by the team, talking about guys losing their jobs, but I would say Amir Coffee too. And I think if it weren't for the fact that the Bucks re-signed Chris Livingston, I think it would probably be a foregone conclusion for just about everyone that, well, Chris Livingston and Andre Jackson Jr. are the odd men out with Amir Coffee and Thanasis on the roster here. But I just think we've seen some things. And while there was growth and progression from Chris Livingston throughout the course of Summer League, I think there's one other interesting piece to all of it. So we'll save that for coming back after the break, and then round out this discussion not only on the rest of the rotation in minutes here, but some more thoughts from national writers on the Eastern Conference and how they very much differ from their readers. We'll get into that conversation coming up next on Locked On Bucks. Well, if you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need, maybe for a plumber or a service provider. If the first person you called did not answer, you probably didn't wait. You just moved on down the list. That's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. They let you manage business calls and texts from a single app, offer a shared inbox where your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat, and have an AI agent that handles after-hours calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer. Open Phone is offering our listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That's openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. So, I kind of liken Chris Livingston to, and Camille. So I fancy myself a very much a home chef. Are you into cooking?
Yes.
Those gadgets that are like, oh, this does this, this, and this, like all in one. They typically don't have much value. Like
Or
it's,
long
oh,
shelf life.
right. It's, oh, great. This does 5 things. I can get rid of 5 tools. Perfect. But you constantly kind of struggle to find, but what is it you like? What is your primary thing? What do you do best? And that's where I'm kind of at with Chris Livingston. Like, oh, we've seen him play, granted against limited competition in Summer League. We've seen him play big. We've seen the not so much playmaking, but decision-making increase. And yeah, he continues to just be a physical force. He can get rebounds. He's tried to knock down corner threes. But I still don't really know what your role is on this team and in this league. Like, I don't know what your position is. He's not quite the jack of all trades. He's kind of the, I'm trying to take on all trades, but I don't know that I could point to a position and say, this is Chris Livingston and this is his role. And that's where I just struggle the most, even though he's young and there is some upside there, finding what is his role on this team or any team.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But again, I think something for the Bucks to consider, and I mean, NBA teams as a whole, is just striking that balance of like, okay, how much are we devoting to that player development and the leash that we are giving to see what this player can become / we're trying to compete. So what's the best bet that we can get into the building? Again, that known entity of like, we know what to expect when they are on the court. You don't have that from a Livingston. You don't have that from a Tyler Smith yet at this point, still growing in this game. Andre Jackson Jr. is, third year now, where you kind of have an idea of what he might become, but there's still hope of like, hey, there could be growth here in this game. But ultimately, to your point, there's still question marks around Livingston, which is, again, initially when I answered, I was like, it's hard because the sample size of what you're comparing is just not the same. It's a lot of intrigue still around Livingston, which when I think about the rotation and how deep in rotation Doc might go, like you said, if it's 10 to 11, what does that back half of the rotation look like? Who are the guys who are not getting into the game? Gary Harris, Chris Livingston probably is on that list, assuming, he makes the team. Tyler Smith, I would assume, the Nasses. Jericho Sims is the interesting one for me, where you did see Doc lean on him at times throughout last season. He had the injury, took him out the rotation. You saw him get some run once he came back as well. But we've seen Doc, as well as prior Bucks coaches before, kind of employ that 3 big rotation. And if they look at Kyle Kuzma as well as a 4, then technically you already kind of have 4 bigs that you're trying to work in your rotation before you get to a Jericho Sims. But the skill set of Sims, while offensively there are the questions, defensively is where he shines because he gives the Bucks a type of big that, as we mentioned when he was acquired, they haven't really had in the Giannis era.
Yeah, so just to wrap up with Chris Livingston, I look at him, I see his size, you see his body, and you say, okay, I think I know what this guy is. And then you watch him play, and you're like, maybe not. I guess you're not what I thought you were, and I think that's the constant struggle. Jericho Sims. So I guess I don't know if we ever fully wrapped it, but you gave your 2. I think my 2 are Andre Jackson Jr. and Chris Livingston that ultimately don't make this team for the Bucks. Jericho Sims is the maybe the most interesting guy when we talk about rotations for this team for the reasons that you just pointed to. And you go back to the final game of the season. Mm-hmm. Jericho Sims played 11 minutes. He played more minutes than Brook Lopez in that game. The Bucks went 9 deep in that game against the Pacers in the elimination game. But for all intents and purposes, it was really like 7 or 8 deep. And really, I mean, for all intents and purposes, it was 5.
Yeah.
The Bucks went deep. They had 2 guys off the bench that played double-digit minutes. Jericho Sims was one of them. Kyle Kuzma, the other. But, some of the things that stand out from that game, Pat Connaughton got a DNP, not surprising. And we have said, and I believe it had even been articulated at some point, that the belief is Gary Harris is basically taking the Pat Connaughton role, where you're going to see him, I would assume, sporadically throughout the course of the regular season. Maybe it's even more than that, but there's a handful of guys that are above you when we get to, crunch time in the playoffs. So Pat didn't play in that game. Andre Jackson Jr. didn't play in that game. The aforementioned Chris Livingston did not play in that game. I think the other very, very notable thing was Ryan Rollins did not play in Game 5 against the Indiana Pacers, which we litigated over at the time too, thinking it was a pretty big mistake. Mm-hmm. And I dare say that won't happen this year. But looking at here's where the roster was then, here's what they went with. Well, Brook Lopez is gone. I don't think you can anticipate nearly 48 minutes from all of your starting lineup. That was by necessity. So as we start to drop those numbers, you factor in for Bobby Portis, right? He played 44 minutes in that game, and he played more minutes in that series, but Bobby's minutes are going to drop because of Myles Turner, that you have a player that you feel like can hold up against multiple styles of offense. So you don't need to lean into, well, let's just go not so much smaller, but let's just go different with Giannis at the 5 and Bobby Portis out there. And I do think that's going to eat into the minutes of Jericho Sims, that I have to wonder, is Jericho Sims kind of going to be the big version of what we think Gary Harris is going to be on this team?
Yeah, like that emergency break glass, and like just in case something happens, you have another big to throw into that rotation. And that's where I'm leaning. And it feels kind of, I don't want to say like weird or off because of that, but like I like what Jericho Sims can give you on the court defensively. Again, I think there's ways to utilize him a bit better offensively. You saw like the lob connections developing between him and Kevin Porter Jr. as the season went on. Just need more guys to throw some lobs when Jericho Sims is on the court. But ultimately, I do think that he's that big that's on the outside of the rotation looking in, unless it's a situational, like you're getting a quick 7 or 5-7 minutes real quick here, and then you're back on the bench, or it's a game where someone's sitting out, so now your playing time increases. But I do think Sims is that odd guy out. And part of it for me, you mentioned the Myles Turner, Brook Lopez difference here, which I think is important to point to, because there were certain times where Brook was just played off the floor, and then your big rotation shrank and you had to go in a different direction. But it's the Kyle Kuzma piece for me that's like, how are we going to see the Bucks utilize him this upcoming season? Like, he started at 3, which felt out of place. We talked about the jumbo lineups with Taurean Prince and Kuz out there, both playing out of position, with Taurean Prince playing the 2, Kuz playing the 3. If Kuz is seen as more of a 4 and maybe a 3 in certain situations, like Do we finally see the Bucks lean a little bit more onto that Kuz Giannis front court, which we thought we would see a little bit more of when the trade was made last year, of like, can this be the thing that unlocks some of these Giannis at the 5 lineups, putting Kuz next to him, another mobile, 6'9", 6'10" guy who can do a little bit of everything around you defensively. But again, all that to say, the Jericho Sims minutes, I think they're going to be few and far between this upcoming season. And Kyle Kuzma is someone who I'm interested in seeing not only the playing time, but how and where he's playing on the court as well when he's in the game.
Yeah, I mean, we intended to get to some other things in this show, but I do want to keep this going here because there's some other interesting takeaways when we examine the rotation and the minutes that this team doled out to players a season ago. So how do we think that's going to change this upcoming season, especially in one big way? And then we will get to that Mark Stein survey that he had with his readers coming up next on Locked On Bucks. Well, you know what time it is. NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. You'll love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet, whether it be player props, building a same-game parlay, or even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It makes every game more exciting, whether you're watching the team you root for or you're just keeping tabs on your fantasy lineup. And it's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. So here's maybe the most interesting thing. I'll reveal the data in a moment, but who do you think is going to play the most minutes for the Bucks this season?
Giannis.
Okay, so let's do this. Do you think Giannis is going to play the most minutes total and average the most minutes per game?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
I
So
do.
last year, do you know who would you guess played the most total minutes?
Regular season only or including playoffs?
Regular season only.
I would guess like Brook Lopez.
It was Brook Lopez because of the 80 games component there and 80 starts. Yes. Brook Lopez was number one. Who would you guess averaged the most minutes?
And
I will tell you Brook Lopez was number 3.
Was it Dame?
It was Damian Lillard.
Yeah.
Camille, 2 for 2. So in terms of the minutes per game, all right, I told you Brook was 3rd. You nailed Dame at number 1. Do you think you could round out the rest of the top 5?
Top 5 minutes played regular season. This is per game or
per game?
Dame, Brook, those are, we know they're both top 3. I would guess Giannis is in there as well.
2 more
per game.
Yes.
Is Gary Trent Jr. in there? I know he had a slow start.
Honorable mention. He's number 6.
Just out. Taurean Prince.
Taurean Prince was number 5.
Yeah, that checks out. Is it AJ? AJ Green?
AJ Green was number 9.
9. Who am I missing here?
So in terms of the top 5 in minutes played for the Bucks, and this is going to really paint the picture of the pace that they played at. Damian Lillard, number 1. Brook Lopez, number 3. Taurean Prince, number 5. Kyle Kuzma, number 4. So not only the pace component when you got Dame and Brook, and to a lesser extent Taurean Prince, taking the bulk of your minutes on an average basis, but you had the 3 most maligned Bucks players on this team were rounding out your bottom of the top 5 in minutes played per game. Brook Lopez, Kyle Kuzma, and Taurean Prince. And when we talk about playing a modernized style of play, that's your top 5. Those are the guys that are getting the most minutes. And I mean, even if we look at it total minutes, Taurean Prince was number 3. Dame was 4th. Gary Trent Jr. was 5 in total minutes, and AJ Green was 6. But yeah, I mean, Andre Jackson Jr. was 9th. So you start to see this, okay. And look, the caveat to be added is you had the Chris Middleton injuries early in the year. You didn't get Kevin Porter Jr. until the post-trade deadline. So those are obviously components to it. But, I mean, Camille, the more numbers you look through and you look back at this team, it's like, wow. I mean, it was really the name of Damian Lillard where we talked ourselves into, you know what? I think this team can compete because the rest of the data just shows you like this was not pretty with this group.
And it was leaned on heavily. It was leaned on heavily for quite some time, which is like the difference between like a regular season rotation and that playoff rotation, which, as we've talked about, I do think that the playoff rotation will be a little bit bigger than what we've seen before in years past, with just the way that the league is trending. But still, we saw some of these guys who had great regular seasons not be playable as much in the playoffs. So it's always two different types of conversations of like, okay, what does that regular season rotation look like? Who are you trusting? Who are you counting on? And even doing like the Knicks crossover this week, one thing Gavin mentioned was that, you know, Tibbs stuck with that starting 5. They played the most possessions by like 500 possessions over any other 5-man group in the NBA. But the numbers showed it wasn't working at the levels you would think that it would. And his hope for the Knicks this upcoming season was that, you know, you'd see more lineup diversification, that the Knicks wouldn't lead the league in 5-man groupings of like, this is the group you see the most. And I do wonder if that's something that you'll see with the Bucks as well, where it is a few more guys in there more consistently, where it's not Taurean Prince is top 5 this year after knowing what you're going to get in the playoffs, but more so in the regular season, trying different lineups so you have the data, and then come playoff time, you have an idea of some things that might work or might not work. I'm really curious about that aspect of it as well, with how different will the lineups look playoff time come, you know, or come playoff time after the regular season. But just thinking of how the regular season starts in itself, I mentioned some of the guys I think is going to be out of the rotation. But I think that the difference we'll see with this year is that some of those top 5 guys, I think I expect them to be the Gary Trent Juniors, the AJ Greens, the Kevin Porter Juniors, a little bit younger, a little bit faster. And hopefully guys that come playoff time, you're comfortable seeing them in the lineups as well.
So let's rapid fire here before we transition to that Mark Stein survey. Myles Turner last year with the Pacers averaged just over 30 minutes per game. More or less with the Bucks?
More.
Yeah,
I think he's probably going to be around 32, 33.
Yeah, Brooke was at 31.8. I would agree with that one. Gary Trent Jr., 25.6 minutes last year, more or less?
More.
Completely agree. AJ Green, 22.7.
More.
Agree as well. Kevin Porter Jr., 19.9.
More.
Yep. Bobby Portis, 25.4.
That one might be less. I don't think it would be by a lot if it is less, but I think it might be, if not right back at that 25, 23, maybe 22 at the low end for BP, just because of the Kuz, the Myles Turner components of it.
Yeah, if we set the over-under at 26 for Bobby, I would take the under.
Yeah.
And it would be like just narrowly missing on the under there. Jericho Sims, 15 minutes per game. There's obviously a wrinkle you can add here.
I'm going to go under.
More, or so let me rephrase this. More, less, or same?
I could see it being same for him because spot minutes kind of add in there. But I think I'm still going to go a little less.
Okay.
I'm going to go less. But I don't think it's by a lot. Like, I don't think you'll be drastically like, oh, he's only getting 5 minutes a game now.
Yeah.
I think he probably around that 10 minutes if on the low end.
I would take same. And it was only 14 games last year. So that's the wrinkle, is that like, well, he's going to average the same amount of minutes per game, I think, but maybe he plays like 30 games, something like that this season for the group. Okay, just a couple more here. Taurean Prince averaged 27 minutes per game last year.
Less.
What would you set the over-under mark at?
For TP, assuming that we are seeing more from Gary Trent, we're seeing more from AJ Green, we're seeing more from Kevin Porter Jr. And again, you look at them like those are guards. Like, what does that have to do with Taurean Prince, who's more of a 3-4 anyways? But again, I do think you see the Bucks lean into that trio a little bit more with one of them picking up minutes at that small forward position. So I think Taurean Prince is probably going to be around like 18-ish minutes a game, somewhere in there.
That's where I came in, like a 17 to 18 minutes type of deal. Okay, two more for you. Ryan Rollins was just under 15 minutes per game.
Ooh, that's a tough one. He might be same. He might be right back at 15 again this year. But I think that's a low end projection for him, that 15. If I had to put money on it, I'd say over slightly. More.
I think it's going to be over significantly. I think they're going to lean into, like we've talked about with this roster of, but you're missing a lot of those bigger wings. I think they're going to lean into, we're going to be really big in the front court and we're going to be smaller, but able to do some things offensively and defensively in the backcourt. And I think
I would love that.
You're going to see games where he and KPJ and he and Gary Trent Jr. are playing a bulk of the minutes. And it's just kind of a rotation of, similar to what we're saying for this roster of, you got really, I think at the mainstays, 4 names that are fighting over 3 spots on a nightly basis, basically. All right, 2 more. I think I said that last time, but here I mean it. 2 more. Cole Anthony averaged just over 18 minutes per game last year with the Orlando Magic.
I think he'll be under that. Not by a lot, but a little under that.
Yeah, I would say probably around like 15, 16 or so. And then this assuming he makes the roster. But Amir Coffey played in 72 games for the Clippers last year. 7th highest minutes average, 24 minutes per game. He played in just about as many games and on average the same amount of minutes as Derrick Jones Jr. for that Clippers team.
Yeah, I think he'd be under on the Bucks. I think he'd be under that on the Bucks.
All right. What if I offered you the same deal? More, less, or the same? You're still going under?
I'm still going under.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, that just kind of shows me, it backs up my belief that I just think he's going to make the team. And I think they'll have to figure out the other spot, whether it be, hey, sorry for the awkwardness, Chris Livingston, but we're releasing you again. Or
what if it's Gary Harris? What if it's a situation where it's like, actually, we planned on him kind of having that Pat Connaughton role here, but with the NASA's coming back and kind of looking at the room here, we think we'd be all right with our guard rotation. We're actually going to keep another wing.
I mean, it's interesting to bring up because, we are all kind of sleeping on that and had not brought up that name of Gary Harris. And there is a very real possibility that he's just nowhere near the same guy that he was at his most effective anymore. And you see that throughout the course of camp and say, well, we actually feel really good about where we're at right now in our backcourt, that it's time for us to move on. Not to be a conspiracy theorist, but I think everybody is kind of pointed to a shared agent, and how quickly he signed in the offseason is kind of the big security blanket that he would potentially have. But it is interesting to bring up because it's not one that I think any of us had really given much consideration to leading up to this. All right. So as we wrap things here, Camille, and I know it was pretty well received by the audience. We got feedback on, by the way. Continue to leave your comments. It helps us out immensely here, and leave your questions that we'll get to as we move closer and closer to the season. But we're going to get into some more of that statistical analysis that we dug into with the on-off numbers and what this Bucks defense could possibly look like and the lift that we saw from players like a Kevin Porter Jr. So we'll start to get into some more of that next week. But as we start to wrap things up here, I mentioned Mark Stein and the Stein line did a reader survey where he asked you, where do you think teams will finish in the Eastern Conference, and he gave his projections as well. But where do you think the audience came in for where the Bucks are going to finish?
Oh boy. I know we've been seeing like 4 to 6, and some people think that's more optimistic for the Bucks. I think they're probably gonna be on the lower end. God, I hope not a 7 or 8. I can see it's probably like 6, 7, or 8, I think for list for his readers. I'm gonna go with I don't want to I can't speak playing in existence in any form. I'm gonna say 6 because I can't handle readers putting them at 7 or 8. I can't.
I mean, Camille, you're on fire today. It was 6. And the interesting thing here is the Cavs and Knicks were number 1 and 2. The Cavs got the most votes for number 1. Knicks got the most votes for number 2. The Magic were not far behind the Knicks.
I can see that.
And then there's a drop off. So 4, 5, and 6, his readers had Hawks, Pistons, Bucks. And the interesting thing is the Bucks were solidly 6. There was a gap between 4 and 5 in the Bucks, and there was a gap between the Bucks and the team that finished 7th. Who will tell you what Mark Stein's picks were, but who do you think that team was that his readers said will finish 7th?
Pacers?
No. The Pacers they did have in the play-in tournament. So the two injured teams, the Pacers and Celtics, they both had in the play-in tournament at 9 and 10, Celtics Pacers respectively.
Okay, so they're not going with Pacers. Is it the Raptors?
No, the Raptors they have missing, which I know you got into that discussion recently, but I actually disagree vehemently. I think the Raptors are not going to be bad this season.
No, I don't think they're going to be bad, but I don't think they're going to be better than the Bucks either.
I don't think they'll be better than the Bucks, but I think they're going to be in the hunt to avoid the play-in tournament.
Oh yeah, I think they have a little bit too much talent, I think, to kind of wallow where we've seen them before. So we mentioned Atlanta, Boston, Miami.
It is not Miami. They have Miami finishing 8th. So they have this
Really?
team finishing better than Miami.
Philly?
Philadelphia 76ers. The readers picked to finish 7th. Now, again, there is a gap between them and the Bucks and where they would finish. But yes, a lot of belief in Philly's ability to stay healthy, I suppose, this season. And Mark Stein's predictions, he has the Bucks 4th and said he could see them neck and neck with the Orlando Magic for the 3rd best record in the conference. So a pretty big difference there in his readers and his point of view on this team.
Yeah, I mean, that's the part about this upcoming season that I think is going to be the fun aspect of it, where you can point to so many different teams and be like, this is why I believe in them, and this is why I think they're going to have a big season. And with, again, the East being open to a degree there, like there's a lot of room to hear out those arguments. Again, I think the Bucks finish, we've mentioned between 4 and 6, but I think they're more in that higher end, like that 4 spot there. Things break right, I could see them finishing 3rd, maybe even 2nd if things really
I can't go that far.
It was a perfect season and other things happened around the league, like 2nd, but like I keep feeling like 4th, but 3rd is like to me the top of where I can see them finishing this up.
Oh yes, I thought you were saying 2nd.
Oh no, 2nd is like if everything in the world went right for the Bucks.
Yeah, I still struggle to find those scenarios of like, hey, everything peaked for the Bucks and the Knicks sucked and the Cavs sucked. And I do think there is a scenario where that happens, where the Bucks do finish 3rd in the conference. I think there's a scenario where it takes some time or maybe an injury occurs and they do finish 6th. So there's just a lot of variance. I would shade more towards the top there. Same with you though. I'll just say 4th to kind of hedge my bets a little bit there. All right. So we got some more of those numbers and lineup data to get into coming up on next week's show. We didn't get into the NBA European League discussion. Maybe there's something of note with the timing of when that league is ideally going to launch. So we can get into that discussion next week as well. And then next week is our last full week before training camp, with media day on Monday the 29th, and then training camp starting the next day, and then 6 days later, the first preseason game. So it is here, this NBA season, after a very, very long journey through the offseason once again. That'll do it for today's show. Leave your thoughts on the back of the roster. We shared our thoughts on who are going to be the odd men out, but what do you think about some of those minutes allocations as well, and who's going to see the biggest jump in minutes? Where would you rank the Bucks' top 5 players in minutes played this season? Because it is going to be very different than it was a season ago. We'll take a look at your input and address it on next week's show. For Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again next week on Locked On Bucks.